If you had a president who accounted for 1/3 of the national debt and you wanted to produce a budget which would get his stamp of approval, what sort of budget would you come up with? We got an answer to what that looks like last night with what the Republican Congress actually pushed through. Now, keep in mind, the Republican budget proposal had 0 Democrats sign off on it because it is an unmitigated disaster. But if the goal is to satisfy your billionaire handlers and the top 1%, this budget proposal is an absolute victory. Here's what's in that budget. So you already have a president who ran up the debt more than any other president in history, and he's looking to top his last performance by selling off anything and everything that isn't nailed down to his rich benefactors. We've already talked about how his administration is full of grifters and billionaire parasites who are looking to take advantage of the American taxpayer. When we look at how the American society is set up, it's clear that it's socialism for the 1% and bottom 90% has to rely on capitalism. This budget proposal that the Republicans put forward is a perfect illustration of what that actually looks like in practice. Because what did we learn in the budget priorities that were pushed forward? First and foremost, there was a $4.5 trillion debt limit increase, which allows this administration to spend as freely as possible. It was so egregious a waste of resources that Thomas Massie was the only Republican who called this a complete farce of a budget that was put forward, and he was the only Republican that voted against it. So when you look at the structure of the budget, what's the message that it should tell the average American? It should tell the average American that we're all screwed. From the 1980s forward, I've often talked about a $50 trillion transfer of wealth from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. This budget proposal is going to make that look like peanuts, because what you're seeing is $2 trillion in cuts to spending that basically accounts for the social safety net that the bottom 90% relies on. So when you're talking about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and any other sort of discretionary funding, you've seen what the priorities are based on what you've seen coming out of Elon Musk and his barely legal group of hackers who are in federal systems doing who knows what, but certainly making recommendations on things that they don't understand and wiping out things that everyday Americans rely on. And this is going to impact red states much more than it will blue states. We already know how red states are absolutely dependent on federal aid for survival. And the vast majority of red state voters voted overwhelmingly for Trump. And this budget proposal, if it gets passed into law, is going to decimate residents in red states. Everybody in those red states was barely making ends meet, and now it's going to be even worse. Prescription drugs are going to go through the roof. Medicaid and Medicare are going to go away. You have school funding that's being reduced. You have school lunches that are being reduced. And all of that is a precursor for another multi-trillion-dollar giveaway to the 1%. And that's before you talk about the deficit increase. Without getting too wonky, there's no other way to describe what we're seeing with this budget proposal than this. It's going to be absolute carnage for everyday Americans. And it's going to be an utter disaster for people who voted for Trump who live in red states. You're getting exactly what you voted for. You were told that this was going to happen, but you chose to ignore it and vote for him anyways. And now he's going to steal everything that isn't nailed down so that his billionaire buddies can go buy another yacht. Congratulations. Hope you enjoy.